But recent stuff I've read about Kincora suggests that top politicians from the other side of the water were going over there and having sex with underage boys. And it looks as if these other homes, like the Elmbridge Guest House and so on. Now this
so we've got Dolphin Square and Elm Guest House.
So in other words, what this looks like is a series of safe locations where this could carry on. No, and of course the purpose of this, from the point of view of manipulation, is child sex abuse is rightly regarded as a heinous crime. It's the sort of thing that you're never going to live down. Having a gay affair is no longer going to end your political career in Britain, but it won't just end your political career, it'll end your social life completely if you were ever convicted. So it's very, very powerful as a means of controlling people who can, and powerful people are drawn into these groups quite deliberately in order to compromise them.
So, but instead of actually being summoned to court, going to trial for any connection possibly, and this whole evidence being tested over Kincora Boys scale, MI5 have been invited onto Blue Peter.
Well, indeed. And of course, people need to realise that when they see a James Bond film, that is fiction. The reality, as we've been saying earlier in this hour, is that NATO intelligence services, definitely including MI6, use paedophilia, use blackmail, and also organise terrorist attacks. They do.
Representing the entire city, this is BCFM. BCFM 93.2.
Now, never let it be said that one honest person can't change things. A US lawyer who single-handedly overturned the acres of lies and myths about the Underpants Bomber. We hear from Kurt Haskell now, who was on the flight and blew the FBI Security Service plot wide open. And he's a US lawyer now living in Costa Rica.
Back on Christmas Day 2009, my wife and I were coming back from a safari in Africa. We had a connecting flight through Amsterdam back to Detroit, where we lived at the time. And we were sitting near the gate waiting for our flight, playing cards, and I saw what looked like a wealthy Indian-type looking man escorting what looked like a poor African teenager, late teenager approximately, up to the counter, and they talked to the girl at the counter, and only the wealthy Indian man spoke, and he said, "This man needs to get on the plane, but he doesn't have a passport." And the girl at the counter said, "Well, no passport, you can't get on the plane." To which the wealthy Indian man argued with her, saying, "He's from Sudan, we do this all the time," something along those lines. And she said, "Well, then you'll have to go down the hallway and talk to a manager." And that was in a secure area, but the wealthy Indian man escorted him down the hallway without an escort. And I quit watching at this point, not thinking anything of it. Little did I know that approximately 8 hours later, as our flight was doing our descent into Detroit, that this African kid that I saw here would try and detonate a bomb, or at least at that time I thought it was a bomb, as we're coming into land in Detroit, and subsequently he became known as the Underwear Bomber. Well, I tried to tell what I saw to the FBI upon landing, and I did, and they're initially really interested. You know, I would suspect the wealthy Indian man would be a major accomplice, one of the most wanted men in the world at this point, is what I thought. And I gave my services to help identify and whatever assistance I could be. Well, a few days later, the FBI came to my law office, and I asked to see the airport security video because there's cameras all over the Schiphol airport in Amsterdam. And they refused. They actually kind of laughed about it. But being an attorney, I knew, well, that's what you do immediately. You have your eyewitness identify the person. Not only that, they didn't show me any still pictures of the helper in Amsterdam either, but they showed me about 8 other still pictures of other people. 2 of them were the Underwear Bomber himself. The other 6 I didn't recognize at all. But they kept, in my opinion, the purpose of the meeting was not to have me help them identify the accomplice, but to try and confuse me and make me think I didn't see what I did. So that started to draw red flags up with me. And then there were reports that came out shortly thereafter. Oh, we've watched 400 some hours of security camera footage from Schiphol Airport, and it shows no accomplice. Well, I knew that was a lie. So red flags are really going up with me at this point. And I started conducting my own investigation, talking to other passengers, reading everything on this story, going to all the court hearings, which were only about a 20-minute drive from my house, so I live close to the court, thankfully. And a lot of times I would be the only passenger from the plane at the hearings. And I would find that what the media would report from the hearings would not be what I would consider the important things that took place at the hearings. They would sensationalize minor things and not report on major things, like how the prosecution withheld a copy of his so-called passport until just before the trial, so his standby attorney couldn't hire experts to analyze it and that sort of thing. About a month after the event, there were hearings in Congress in the U.S. about the underwear bomber case, and it shocked me during the hearings when the State Department official, Patrick Kennedy, admitted that they knew the underwear bomber was a potential terrorist, but they put him on the plane intentionally. They admitted this, and you can watch it on YouTube, the video of the hearing. But they lied about the reason. The reason that was given by the State Department was to let him lead the government to other terrorists within the U.S. Sounds plausible, but after about a year and a half of my investigation, I figured out finally what had really happened. And what my investigation led me to discover was that the underwear bomber was given a defective bomb that lacked a detonator by a U.S. government undercover agent who the underwear bomber thought was a member of Al-Qaeda. So, interestingly enough, two expert witnesses hired by the prosecution to testify at the trial, bomb experts, were both going to testify that the bomb was impossibly defective. So I'm not even sure we can call it a bomb. But there was an article in the Detroit Free Press that said this. It's subsequently been scrubbed from online, but maybe you can find an archived version somewhere. So, point being, Al-Qaeda does not go through this big setup to do this big attack and not have a bomb that would be impossibly defective. So, that with many, many other things I discovered throughout my research led me to believe that this was in fact a false flag attack. The government admitting they put him on the plane on purpose, and you can put two and two together. Then when I was going to testify at the hearing, the underwear bomber listed me as his only witness in the trial. But 3 hours into the trial, he pled guilty to mandatory life in prison with no chance of parole, which nobody ever does. You take your chances in a trial, that maybe you'll win. Why would you take a plea to never getting out of prison? What made this extra strange was I had talked to a standby attorney many times as the court case proceeded, and we would often have conversations about how lenient plea deals were on the table because the government merely wanted the case to go away. Those were words from a standby attorney to me. So to reject lenient pleas only to take one to life in prison with no chance of parole does not make any sense whatsoever. A few months after the plea, I ran into his standby attorney at court on another case, and we had a discussion in the hallway about how ridiculous the plea was, and his standby attorney told me, well, that plea was made because the underwear bomber was either threatened or tortured while he was in prison. You can see how all this kind of played out. A lot of these things not reported or scantily reported by the media. I finally got 5 minutes in court to speak. You can read my victim impact statement online where I lay out a lot of what I consider to be the atrocities of this case to perpetuate a fraud on the American public. But that's basically the very, very short version of what happened to me and how I discovered and basically exposed the false flag underwear bomber attack single-handedly. I was really the only one doing any investigation into this. So, because of that, I know the playbook of the false flag attacks. I know the tricks because I was watching this one play out before me when I knew certain facts that I witnessed, and I knew certain other confidential information that I knew talking to his standby attorney and other witnesses, and I saw firsthand how the government and media would hide things push other things, lie about certain things, hide other things, and I learned their playbook. So now I feel I can apply their playbook to other events that happen and realize which ones are factual and which ones are not.
Well, that's Kurt Haskell there, American lawyer, who was on the same plane as Umar, Farouk, Abdulmutallab. I think I pronounced that right. That was the Underpants Bomber. That was in Christmas Day 2009. Martin, pretty interesting, but I mean, what he's saying there is everybody now, really, including himself, has got to look at every one of these attacks and assess it for themselves, because you can't trust the press.
You can't, and you can't trust the government's statements about it when it happens. I'm not saying that all attacks are carried out by underground networks based inside the security forces, but it's a perfectly good working hypothesis for most of these attacks. They all fit the same pattern. OK,
we've also had the death of King Fahd of Saudi Arabia this week. Now, the Saudi Arabia was set up back in 1915 by the British, wasn't it? The Treaty of Darin.
Indeed it was, and of course it's not really I'm looking forward to the election, and if they don't have an election, I'm sure we'll be invading them soon, won't we?
Absolutely. Finally, Greece. We've got an election this week. Syriza coming in. What's going to happen there? Well, are they going to be in or out of the Euro?
Well, they will try. If they win, they're going to come under an awful lot of pressure to kiss the boot. It'll be interesting to see how they react to that.
It certainly will. We're online at www.thisweek.org.uk. I'm Tony Gosling. Don't let the banksters get you down, and we'll see you again at 5 next week.
Bringing you national news on the hour.